Chumash for today, Sunday, Parshas Matis and Maseh, double Parsha. Let's go. Perek Lamed, chapter 30, Pasuk Beis. Vayidaber Moshe al Roshei Matis. Moshe spoke to the heads of the tribes of Bnei Yisrael, Lemar, to the heads of the tribes of the children of Israel, saying, Lemar, saying, Zeh hadavar asher tziva Hashem. This is what Hashem has commanded. Beis Roshei Matis. Chaluk was so the heads of the tribes. Chaluk covered on a seam l'lamdam tchila, v'arkech l'chol b'nei Yisrael. So it's saying that I'm not sure this is always, but in this case, does it say there? Let's just see. I'm not sure if this was a general thing at the time. Okay, either here, Moshe related at least this passage first to the princes, and then he taught it to the children of Israel. As to honor them, it's you give the first shear to the leaders of the tribes. Rashi, I asked too soon. From where do we know that even other dibres, other speeches of teaching Torah, of the mitzvahs, was given first? I think it was given to Aaron, and then it was given to the leaders of the tribes. And why did it go then to in that order? How do we know that? It says elsewhere in Shemais, Aaron, all the leaders would approach Moshe, and Moshe would speak to them, and afterwards all the children of Israel. Okay, so now we know. The way it worked was either Aaron was together with them. I think Aaron was separate, but definitely the Moshe first taught the new mitzvah to the leaders and then to the children of Israel. Why then did the Torah see fit to say it again specifically here? This is always why you mentioned right? It's called mates, the heads of the mates. So you could start every mitzvah transmission could start with saying he said it to the heads of the mates of the tribes. Mm-hmm. But we don't. We rely. That was we said it once, and that was for everybody. It says Moshe spoke to the children of Israel in that order, but you don't have to say it every time. Why are you saying it again? Because actually something there's a certain connection, special role that the leaders have in this mitzvah of the annulment of vows. That if someone is an expert, a Torah leader, let's say, then they can annul a vow by themselves, just one. But understand, usually to annul vows, you need three people. But if you're an expert, I guess some sort of leader, Torah leader, then just one is enough. That one guy. Now Rashi posits maybe you could be devil's advocate, and it's not talking. Maybe he didn't even tell it to the Jews after he told. Maybe he just told it to the leaders, and they told it to the Yidden. Says no, you can't say that because here you see a gzeira shava, similar words here, and by the laws of slaughtering karbanes, unauthorized slaughtering karbanes outside the temple area. And there, it was clearly that he told that mitzvah to Aaron, his sons, and all of Israel, and leaders in Israel, each a separate time. Because it says there, speak to Aaron and them and the children of Israel. So too, it was addressed to all of them. Bottom line is, This was said here to the leaders and then to the children of Israel. Somebody should repeat it a few times. Zehadavar, this is the matter. This is the matter. Moshe nisnave bekoyam Hashem chatzis elayla, v'anaviyim nisa bekoyam Hashem musu leMoshe shenistam beloshin zehadavar. So when you read the pasuk, you're like, "This is the matter Hashem commanded." Why do you have to Pesach David? I have something to tell you. Imagine you're Moshe and you're like you're teaching Torah. Like obviously, it's the thing that Hashem commanded. That's why I'm telling you it's a mitzvah. Mm-hmm. So it's actually apparently there's a Chassidus brings us down, but it's in Rashi that the Rashi according from the Gemara that it says the other prophets were on a lower level than Moshe. Why were they on a lower level than Moshe? Because the language, whenever they would start the prophecy, would be Koyamar Hashem. So says Hashem. Moshe was a higher level. He could say Zeh. Koy also means like. Hashem said like this. In other words, it's kind of like this. But Moshe Zeh. This exactly what Hashem said. It's a much more clearer prophecy. The difference of Koy and Zeh. Dover Acher, another interpretation is Zeh Dover Miyatu. This is the matter. That is a limiting phrase. Basically this. Another interpretation of why it says Zeh Dover. Again, because you could kind of take away this pasuk and still understand exactly what Moshe is doing. Why is he prefacing with Zeh Dover Shesiv Hashem? Because there's a special din in the laws of annulling vows that the language of annulment, there's two areas of annulling vows. One is hataras nedarim. Hataras nedarim, that if you make a vow you can't keep, you go to the chacham or the three people, and you ask them, I wasn't able to, and I didn't know I couldn't do it, so please help me annul my vow. That is called hataras nedarim, means the untying of the vow, the releasing the vow. We're also going to learn a more specific category that a father or a husband can annul vows for the daughter or wife, but it's called hafaras nedarim, which means like removal, I think more. Mm-hmm. And you got to use those languages. You got to use those terms. You got to use hataras by regular and hafaras by the daughter or wife. If you don't, zed, this is how you have to do it. If you don't, it doesn't work. It's got to be very specific. That's why it says zed, this way only, not other language. Mm-hmm. Gimel, ish ki yidur nedel Hashem yishav shvu l'asar yisar. If a man makes a vow to Hashem or swears an oath, L'asar yisar al nafshay, to impose a restriction upon himself, lo yachal dvara, he must not violate his word. Everything that comes out of his mouth, he has uttered. Gimel. Neder. Ha'omer harei alai koinam. So what's a neder? Someone says, I take upon myself an obligation of a sacrifice. Or shlayech, I won't eat. Or shlayech, I won't do such a thing. So there's the vow is when you're basically prohibiting things that were permitted. That you can do. But what about, I'm going to go eat a cheeseburger. Can you do that? Chas v'shalom. Talmud Leimer, it says it says whatever comes out of your mouth, you got to do. Maybe even to violate the Torah. Talmud Leimer, lesor yisar. No. You can only make a vow on things to prohibit more, not to permit that which is prohibited. That's it. How long is today?
So the parsha.
Fine. But I do not violate your words. He must not violate his word is the equivalent of he must not make his words profane. He must not violate his word is his equivalent. He shall not make his words profane. Okay. A word is sacred. An oath is sacred. A vow is sacred. Okay. Dalit. If a woman makes a vow to Hashem and she imposes a restriction on herself while she's under her father's house jurisdiction, in her youth, Rashi house means jurisdiction of her father. She has to live with her father. She's still under 12 and a half or so, and she's unmarried, so she's still under her father's jurisdiction. In her youth. So in her youth means not a young girl and not a mature woman, because it's not a night is in the middle. Why? Katana, she's too young to know it's flying, so obviously her words aren't binding. Abageres, if she's already mature and she's responsible for herself. She's not in her father's domain anymore. So what's a katana? Rabbi said a katana is 11 years old in one day. Oh, sorry. What's a katana? So here's a little quote of the Gemara. If she's 11 years in one day, then you check her maturity level. And then her vows. If she knows what she's doing, then you say, okay, that's what she's doing. She knows and she's responding. And then the vow's a vow. If she's 12 years old and one day, even if she's very silly, the vow still becomes, she's immature still. She's still, and you have to check. You assume it's good. If she's under 11 in one day, she's regardless. It's nothing. Hey, her father hears her vows. And her father hears her vows. Or a restriction that she imposed on herself. And yet her father remains silent to her. Okay, so if she makes a vow under her father's jurisdiction, she's youngish. Then, if the father doesn't protest it, all vows or restrictions that she did to herself, will stand. Be valid. Okay, Vav. If her father withheld from her on the day that he heard them, if her father withheld her from her vows on the day that he heard them, all her vows and restrictions that she imposed upon herself will not be valid. Hashem yislach la, and Hashem will forgive her, for her father withheld her vows. In other words, her father has the veto power to say, this doesn't. She can't do that because she's not going to manage, and not breaking a real vow is a big offense. So I'm not letting her take that vow. Says Rashi, if her father withheld from her. So Heini is an unusual word. It means withhold. Rashi, I'm not really sure where this verb hana, what it means, until it says later you see it says that if the father, the day he hears it, he withholds it, he yoni isa, and he's annuls it. Oh, so it must mean it's something that prevented. In other words, it's has he prevented? No, she says it. His preventing is afterwards making a statement of hafaras nadarim, vetoing the vow. Simple meaning of yani means withholding. We see in Tehillim, Bamidbar in Tehillim, we see that verb used. Shema Reishi al Yani Reish, Yani Reishi. You shall know my estrangement that you've turned away from her. Okay, Hashem Yisachlam, Hashem will forgive her. What do you mean Hashem will forgive her? She didn't do anything wrong. Understand? What's anything wrong? You have a vow, you break it, that's then you gotta get forgiven. If you don't have a vow, what are you forgiving for? So here's a specific case. A woman who vows to become a Nazir, and her husband, or I guess her father in that case, went and withheld it for her. They said, nope, whatever she said is not valid because she can't do it. Okay. And she didn't know that her husband vetoed her vows. But as predicted, she didn't keep her Nazirus, and she she drank wine. So did she really sin? No, because without her unbeknownst to her, her husband or father had vetoed that vow. So she was not really a Nazira, and it wasn't really a problem. But she thought she was a Nazira, and she thought she broke her vow. Even that needs forgiveness. So this is very interesting, the concept of if someone thinks they're sinning for whatever reason, a weakness, whatever it is, but they're not really sinning. So there's no objective damage done in the cosmos. Like she didn't actually do a sin. She didn't bring klipa into the world. But she thought she did, because she thought she was rebelling. Whatever. It's interesting that there's still. I don't totally understand how it works, but it's interesting that it does work like that.
It's one of the 13 attributes, right?
Forgiveness?
No, if you don't have empathy, right?
Yeah.
And you did Hashem. You didn't realize how important it is not to do something against Hashem, the will of Hashem.
So you're saying the person thinks they're rebelling. That's already a problem, even if they're not. Very interesting. I don't know.
No, if somebody does something wrong, right?
Yeah.
I think it gives it one case that if it likes a match, right?
Yeah.
He throws it in the driveway, no problem. But he wouldn't throw the match even if there's the slightest bit there in the baby's crib, right?
Mm-hmm.
Kitchen fire. So because he had empathy, he knew not to throw the match, right? He didn't want to go against Hashem's will. And
If someone though was careless and they threw a match to the baby's crib, they didn't know the baby wasn't there. That's more the example here. They're either being sloppy or rebellious, one or the other. They didn't know that it was just
But if he had empathy, he wouldn't do it, right? So isn't that the same part of the 13?
I mean, if the person had more awareness, and whether it was they were careless or they were being defiant, one or the other, either they're being negligent or they're being defiant. That's how you do a sin, either by mistake or on purpose. But there's no harm really done. You thought you were going to harm the baby or Hashem, whatever. It's just an interesting concept. Okay, Continuing on Zion. If she is betrothed to a man and has vows upon her, till now we talked about a 12-year-old, approximately 12-year-old daughter, still under her father's jurisdiction. But let's say she's married to a man, and she has vows, or any utterance of the lips that she imposes, that she restricts on herself. Rashi, if she is to a man, literally means if she is to a man. So how are you to a man? There's two different ways. There's different stages. Zuarusa. This refers to a betrothed woman. Or maybe it refers to Nesua, right? There's two. There's Edosin and there's Nisuyan. So Edosin is when you're betrothed, but you're still, she's she can't live with her husband, but she's forbidden to anybody else. She's designated basically to her husband. And the Suyan is when she goes to the chuppah and they're married. So what does it mean to be to a man? She has to, are we talking in the scenario where she's only betrothed, designated, or is she fully married? So when it says in Beis Isha in the Dara HaNesua Amr, it's because another Sukkim later is going to talk about a clear scenario of Nesuyin. What's left? Mr. Edison. Uboy lach ligbo. And the verse is making a distinction regarding her. That her father and her husband are annulling her vows. So this is a unique case where the teenage daughter, whatever, 19 inches, 12, the Naira daughter, the lass, she's betrothed. In general, back in the day, betrothal took at least 12 months until you then went to get fully married in the chuppah. And that 12 months, within that period, so she's a arusa. If she makes a vow then, both her father and her groom have to annul it together. If only one does, it would stay. The vow stays. She has vows upon her. She has vows upon her, and she made vows in her father's house. But her father did not hear about them, and thus they were not annulled or validated. Ches. On the day of hearing the vow, her husband hears it. On the day of hearing the vow, her husband hears it. Yet remains silent towards her. That her vows will be valid and the restrictions she imposed upon herself will be valid. Okay, I'm sorry. So she makes a vow. She's betrothed. Her husband hears the vow and he is silent. Then the vows stay, and she's got to restrict whatever she posed on herself. That's valid. Her husband hears. Here you see that if the husband validated the vow, it is valid. Here you see that the husband validated the vow, it is valid. Okay. If the husband validated the vow, it is valid. Okay. Test. In the day her husband's hearing it, he he withholds her behavior as in the and annuls the vow that's on her. And any utterance that she said, Hashem will forgive her. Behavior is in the he knows the vow that is upon her. I might have thought, even if the father did not annul it, the fact later on it says that she's in her father's house, I mean, not fully married, her father also has to annul it. Here it only talks about the husband having to annul it. We're saying this scenario where she's betrothed, the husband and the father. So just as the husband, what about the father? It's elsewhere you see clearly. As long as she's still in her husband's father's house, he's also got to know it. Yud. Now the vow of a widow or a divorced woman, anything that she imposed upon herself, he will remain valid for her. So here's a woman who is under her own jurisdiction. She was married, then she got divorced or widowed. So she's her own person for total responsibility. Basically, here we're talking about a widow or divorcee from full marriage, from Nisuyin. If it was a case where she was just betrothed and her groom died or broke it off and divorced her, then she goes back to her father's jurisdiction. But once she has full marriage, she's not going back to she cannot go back to her father's domain, any type of jurisdiction. If she's fully married and then gets divorced, she's totally her own person.
But a widow can?
Or a widow as well, also her own person.
I thought
only if it was from a betrothal, right? She's still very young and she's only betrothed. And that breaks off, then it goes back. Yud Aleph. If she made a vow while in her husband's home, or she imposed a restriction upon herself in an oath, Rashi. So here we're talking now, she's in her husband's home, meaning she's married. So father's done. She's married fully, turn her husband. She makes a vow. Her husband hears it, and he remains silent. And does not withhold it, does not veto it. And all her vows will be valid. Any restriction that she imposed upon herself will be valid. Yud Gimel. If her husband completely annuls them on the day of hearing them, any utterance of his lips for her vows and for her restrictions will not stand. Because her husband has annulled them. And therefore Hashem will forgive her. Yudalit. Any vow or any restrictive oath made to afflict herself. So now it's saying the husband cannot veto everything his wife takes upon herself. It's only things that are. Let me take it back. Right. It says any vow that is afflicting herself. That's the ones that he has say in it. Rashi says, Yidal, because till now, since we said till now, husband gets to annul the vows. Anything she says, he can veto. Sounds like it. It's not that. Yochel kol nedarim shemashma. Talmud leimer l'anis nafesh. Says no. The husband is not this like total control. What is it? Why does he have any say to begin with of her vows? Because if she's doing ones that are afflicting herself, that are going to cause her pain, which by definition will harm the family, or then he has a say, because I guess he suffers the consequences as well. And what are these? They're elucidated in the tractate Nedarim of what all the. It's just to give you a sample. If she vows not to taste a certain food or drink, he can say, so saying she's not going to have certain foods is afflicting herself. Yeah. Okay. Moving on. Tess.
How does that hurt him? If he avoids it, vetoes.
Because she'll be cranky.
Okay.
I don't know, maybe.
Okay.
Tess. But if her husband remains completely silent towards her from one day to the next day, and he upholds all her oaths or her restrictions, as she said, he has validated them because he was silent and they heard them. He didn't argue, didn't protest. If he remains quiet from one day to the next, meaning till nightfall, not 24-hour period, means here till the next day starts, which is nightfall. If he knows them after he heard them, then he will bear the responsibility towards her transgression. After he heard them, after he heard and validated it by saying, he said, I agree to it, and he retracted it even on the very same day. Meaning, he doesn't do it before night and the day's over, and he if he knows it, I'm sorry. If he says, I agree, and then he tries to backtrack and annul it, then he bears the responsibility of a transgression, because he didn't actually invalidate it, and it sounded to her like he invalidated it, because he says, I take it back. You can't take it back. These are the statutes that Hashem has commanded Moshe between a man and a wife, between a father and his daughter, when she's in her youth, under her father's jurisdiction. Rashi. Basically, interesting that since he said, I'm upholding the vow, you're forbidden. Now he said, but I'm taking it back, I'm taking it away. You don't have to do the vow. That doesn't work, but she thinks it worked. So he's, on purpose or mistake, messing her up. She's now going to go do the vow, break it, and think it's okay. He's responsible. If you cause your friend to sin, you get the responsibility. Amar Aleph. These are the statutes that Hashem has commanded Moshe. Between a man and his wife, a father and his daughter, Rabbi Savia. Next, sorry. Paragraph Aleph. Hashem said to Moshe, saying, exact revenge of the children of Israel from the Midianites. After that, you'll be gathered to your people. From the Midianites, not from the Moavim. Because the Moabites got involved in the matter out of fear, for they were afraid. The Moavim entered. Okay, so Hashem is saying, now it's payback time to the Midianites. Because, but wait a second, this is referring to the Midyanim and the Moavim made an alliance and tried to curse the Jews, which failed. But then they, plan B, they had their daughters seduce them and cause immorality and cause a plague. So, but yet the Hashem is saying, take revenge from the Midianites. Why not the Moabites? Because the Moabites, they only got involved out of fear. Because the Yidden were somewhat near them, they're on the border. They thought they were going to attack them. They thought they were going to attack them. Okay. Because it says that the Yidden were forbidden to go conquer them, but they were allowed to intimidate them and take spoils. So there was fear. But the Midianites, I guess they were further away. Why'd they travel to come into this far away, in this distant war? Out of hatred. So as a hatred, we have to take care of our haters. Another explanation of why you have to take revenge against the Midianites, why they're being commanded. The reason we're not going to go to war against Moab is because ultimately, way down the line, two righteous women will come from them. Rus and Nama. Rus is the great-grandmother of David HaMelech, and Nama is from whatever. Nama the Ammonis. Okay. Gimel. Moshe said to the nation, saying, equip men from among you from the army. You are Midian, so they shall wage war against Midian. They'll say things Hashem Midian to carry out Hashem's revenge against Midian. Moshe then spoke. Moshe was told, after you do this war, you're going to pass away. But Moshe didn't hesitate for a second. He was happily doing what Hashem said, even though you die after. What does it mean? Uncle says, equip yourself for the war. Arm yourself. Arm the men. Anoshim means righteous men. Hashem's revenge for one who stands against Israel. It's as if he's standing against Hashem. One tribe, 1,000 per tribe, for all the tribes of Israel. You shall send to the army. You shall send to the army. Yeah. For all the tribes of Israel. The Rabbi Shevet Levi. This is coming to include the tribe of Levi. Also brought it there. So there was. So it's interesting. There's only 12,000, but there's 13 tribes, including Levi, Manasseh and Ephraim. But together they only had 1,000, which is different than being counted separate for the portion in Israel. Each got a portion. But for this war, they only were considered one tribe to give 500 each. The super commentaries talk about it, that anything involved with inheriting the land, the Yosef is two tribes, but this is not about this is about payback for hatred. So this war had nothing to do with conquest, so that they're not a separate tribe then. Interesting. Okay. Hey, Hamas from Alpha Yisrael, Lamata. So 1,000 from each tribe was given over. Shnei Maser Elef Chalutze. So from the thousands of Israel, 1,000 per tribe, 12,000 total. Hamas was given over. This tells you the praise of the leaders of Israel, how much they're beloved to the Jewish people. I'm sorry. This tells you how much the Jewish people love their leaders, their shepherds, their Moshes. We know sometimes the Jews really got crazy angry at Moshe, and he said, "Oh no! If I wait any longer, they're going to stone me. Like they're so angry. Like me, Moshe, like he was worried for his life sometimes from the Jewish people. Once they hear Moshe is really going to be taken away after this war, they didn't want to do the war. They didn't want it to go, and Moshe is going to be taken away. It had to be a must. It had to be forced on them. It was placed on them. Nonetheless, they were forced to. It shows how much they love Moshe ultimately. So Moshe then sent to the army 1,000 men for each tribe. Okay. Them and Pinchas, the son of Elazar Kayin, for the war, to the war, and as with also the sanctuary vessels and the wailing trumpets with him. Them and Pinchas. So it's interesting. There's 12,000 guys and Pinchas. You're showing Pinchas was equal to all the 12,000. Why then did Pinchas go and not Elazar? The one who began the mitzvah that he killed, Kazi Basur, shall complete it. Another interpretation is that he went to avenge Yosef, his mother's father. As it says in the Midanim, sold Yosef. From where do we know that Pinchas? I'm sorry. Interesting. So just to understand Rashi's question. Who would be the ideal candidate to go do the war? Lead the war. In your opinion, who? Moshe. Hashem told him, go do it. But it says Moshe couldn't do it because he was raised in Midian, spent time there. So it wasn't appropriate he himself should lead it. Okay, second choice, who should be it? You might say Elazar, he's the high priest. No, we skip over him and go to Pinchas. Why Pinchas? Because Hashem said Pinchas was the guy who began the mitzvah of stopping the Midianite with killing Kazi Basur. So he should take revenge against all of them. Another explanation why Pinchas did it, because he was going to, Pinchas was a descendant from Yosef. His mother came both from Yisro and Yosef, descendants of them, by marriage. So he was going to avenge his great-grandfather's vengeance. Why? Because it says the Midianim were one of the people that sold Yosef in the chain of slavery. How do you know that Pinchas is from his mother from Yosef? Shinamar, it says that Elazar, the son of Ari, married one of Putiel's daughters. So it's interesting. You're skipping Elazar, and Pinchas ben Elazar, right? Elazar's alive. Let the father go lead the war. No, Pinchas. Because Elazar married a woman from the daughters of Yosef and the daughters of Yisro. So it had to be Yosef. So Pinchas is more destined to be the one to take vengeance from the Midyanim, to avenge they sold Yosef into slavery. Another explanation shows Meshuach Mechama, he was not the high priest, but he was what we call the anointed for war. So it's a special second, vice kohen that goes to lead them to war. Very interesting. You might have thought that Pinchas comes from Yisrael. Yisrael was a priest of Midian. Maybe he also shouldn't do it. It's not nice to kill, your. But that didn't apply. So the Torah to say. Had to specify Pinchas. Despite that, he was the guy to lead it. The sanctuary vessels. This is the ark and the tzitz, the headband. That's what went with them. Not every single vessel, just those two vessels. Why they need those vessels? Bilam was still around, was still alive, and he went to war with the Midianites against the Jews. And Bilam used magic. He made the princes of Midian and himself fly. It's hard to, have flying
enemy
air force, it's hard. So to counteract that magic, they would put the tzitz. They're flying, and they would say, drop. That's where it says that over the slain, regarding the kings of Midian, that they fell on they fought the war, the Jews fought the war on the ground, and then the princes fell on top of them, dead. It says El Chalem. It says in Joshua, it says he was over their slain. He was killed over their slain, meaning literally means like in addition. You might think simply it's a way of saying in addition to their slain, but no, actually it's literally on top of. They took the trumpets in their hands. Hand means in their possession. Okay.
It's got to be another nace, right?
Well, yeah.
People falling on the Jews and they didn't get hurt.
Not the Jews. They fell on the slain Midianites.
Right. Oh.
They did get hurt.
I thought they.
They waged war against Midian as Hashem commanded Moshe. And they killed every male. And they killed the kings of Midian over their slain, as we said. And who were they? The names of the 5 kings of Midian. As well as Bilam and Sanbar, they killed by the sword. Rashi. Why are you saying 5 kings? You list each guy, and together they're 5. You don't have to say 5. Say the kings. These kings. 1, 2, 3, 4 is 5. Why say 5? So that they were all equally involved in the original plot to get the Jews to sin. And therefore, they all were equally punished, equated in the punishment. Bilam, he had gone to Midian. So Bilam had gone to Midian to go get his payment for the advice, his consulting fee of how to hurt the Jews. So he went, and then at that time he left Midian to encounter Israel and gave them bad advice. Bilam told the Jewish army, you're going to lose. Because when you were strong and 600,000 strong, you fell morally and succumbed to the enticement and you sinned and you got hurt. God, you had a plague. And you lost that battle, essentially. So here we are a small army, just 12,000. What do you think you're gonna win? So they They then gave him his full payment, did not underpay him, and they killed him. It's like, you obnoxious, bad consultant. Not only are we going to win, we're going to kill you. And they killed him. By the sword, who by he came against Israel by changing his craft for their craft. For they are only victorious with the power of their mouths. And he came and took up their craft to curse them with his mouth. They too came against him and exchanged their craft for the craft of the nations. They came against him. We said this earlier, so repeating it. So Bilam, why did he get killed? Why does Terah say he got killed? Who cares how he got killed? A bomber, a bomb, a dynamite, sword, who cares? It's staying a point because Bilam, we said, he took a Jewish power, the power of the mouth, to try to harm them. So he says, yeah, really, you're the non-Jewish nation. You're the people of the sword. We're the people of the mouth. You're going to steal our power, the mouth, and try to hurt us. We're going to take your craft and kill you with your craft with the sword. Okay. Yud. The test. The children of Israel, they captured the women of Midian and their children, and plundered all their animals, all their livestock, and their property. Yud, they burned in fire all their cities, and all their towers or monasteries, it says there. Sarvesh, they burned in fire. All their cities and their so it says here, their monasteries. Interesting term. Why Teresim is monasteries? The place of their scholars. Which is a place of their monastery, of their priests who knew their laws. Another explanation means Teresim means the palaces. They took all the booty and all the spoil of people and animals. He goes called Shavu Gamer. They took all the booty. This tells us they went upright. They were upright and righteous, and were not suspect of stealing, misappropriating the booty without permission. Shenemar kol shalo, as it says, all the booty. So they took it, they put it on for the Moshe. Your teeth are as white as the flock of ewes, even your warriors are righteous. Shalol is booty. This means movable objects of clothing and jewelry. Baz, plunder, is not. Sorry. So booty is clothing and jewelry. Plunder is non-jewelry stuff you got. Malkech, spoils, is the human and animal captives. And this is, and sometimes shvi, captive is by Malkech, and shvi can mean captive by humans, and Malkech is animals. Okay, so Malkech means like captives. If it's by itself, it's animals and humans. If it's shvi Malkech, the shvi is the humans, and Malkech is the animals. It's in the car. They brought the captives. They brought to Moshe and Elazar the Kohen, all the congregation as well. So she has Malkeach, the captives, the human captives, Malkeach, the animals. So it's a Shalol. The Shalol, we said, is the jewelry and clothes. El Machane, to the camp. El Arves Moav, which was by the plains of Moab. Ashal Yarichai, which was by the river Jordan at Yerichai. Okay.